Cooking rice looks simple because modern appliances hide the difficult part. The cook must supply heat, but also reduce or stop it at the right moment. Too early leaves hard grains. Too late burns the bottom. In 1955, Toshiba released Japan's first automatic electric rice cooker and turned that judgment into a mechanism. Earlier electric cookers could heat a pot, but they still depended on a person. The important word was automatic. Rice and water went into the vessel. The user flipped a switch. As long as liquid water remained, the temperature of the pot stayed near the boiling point. When the water had been absorbed or evaporated, the temperature began to rise. A temperature-sensitive switch detected that change and cut the heat. The machine used physics as a timer. This was a small domestic revolution because rice was not an occasional meal. It was prepared every day, often while a household was also managing work, children, cleaning, and other dishes. Removing supervision did more than save minutes. It freed attention. The first models still had limitations, and manufacturers continued improving insulation, heating control, non-stick surfaces, warming modes, and eventually electronic programs. But the central interaction was already complete. Measure rice, add water, press 1 control, and leave. The original 1955 cooker disappeared because its idea spread so completely. Automatic rice cookers became ordinary across Japan and much of Asia, then adapted to different grains and cooking styles around the world. The appliance is easy to dismiss as a pot with a wire. Its real invention was not electric heat. It was a reliable decision. The rice cooker watched the moment a human no longer had to watch, and gave that piece of the day back. That is the short version of the automatic rice cooker story. To understand why it mattered, we need to slow down and examine the entire system around it. The operator, the mechanism, the infrastructure, the economics, the social habits, the transition, the exceptions, and the legacy. Start with the human routine. The automatic rice cooker's essential problem was not producing heat but identifying the moment when continued heat would damage the food. The important comparison is not between human labor and a machine in isolation, but between two complete routines. A product earns a place in daily life when it removes decisions, interruptions, and opportunities for error as well as physical effort. Notice who begins the task, who watches it, who corrects it, and who cleans up afterward. Those quiet obligations often explain adoption better than a specification sheet. A faster mechanism can still feel slow when it repeatedly calls a person back into the process. Now look closely at the mechanism. Liquid water held the cooking vessel near its boiling temperature until absorption and evaporation changed the thermal conditions. A mechanism can appear simple after it becomes familiar, yet its design fixes a chain of choices about timing, force, feedback, and control. Those choices determine what the operator must still notice and what the product can safely decide by itself. The useful question is where judgment lives. It may sit in a lever, a gauge, a physical stop, a warning sound, or the practiced senses of the user. Later designs often look smarter because they move more of that judgment inside the product. The third layer is infrastructure. A temperature-sensitive switch converted that physical transition into a reliable instruction to reduce or stop power. Objects do not spread on engineering merit alone. They rely on power, communications, roads, plumbing, retail, repair, standards, or trained workers. When that supporting network changes, the same object can move from essential to inconvenient without changing its physical form. Infrastructure is easiest to notice when it is missing. Once it becomes reliable, Designers can assume it exists and remove features that once compensated for uncertainty. The next generation then appears simpler only because more complexity has moved out of sight. There is also an economic question. The mechanism replaced sensory judgment based on sound, smell, timing, flame strength, grain, weather, and cookware. Buyers compare more than the price on the day of purchase. They also absorb time, maintenance, supplies, training, risk, and the cost of keeping an older system alive. A replacement becomes persuasive when the total burden shifts. Even if the original product still works, that burden is distributed unevenly. The purchaser, operator, repairer, employee, and family member may each experience a different cost. A successful product can therefore win by solving the problem of the person who makes the decision, even when another person performs the work. The social meaning matters too. Because rice was prepared daily, removing supervision returned attention repeatedly rather than saving time only on special occasions. Everyday products signal expectations about speed, cleanliness, status, privacy, responsibility, and skill. People may accept an awkward device when it represents progress, or abandon a capable one when its rituals begin to feel out of step with ordinary life. Advertising can amplify that shift, but it does not create it alone. Friends, workplaces, shops, and public institutions teach people what normal use looks like. Once the new behavior becomes ordinary, the old routine can seem demanding even to someone who once performed it without complaint. Replacement rarely happens in a single moment. Later insulation, warming functions, non-stick surfaces, pressure, induction heating, and microprocessors refined the result without changing the one-switch promise. Old and new systems overlap while prices fall, habits adjust, and supporting services reorganize. During that interval, decline can look slow. Once the surrounding network tips toward the replacement, however, the remaining market can contract with surprising speed. This is why a date of invention rarely marks a clean beginning, and a date of discontinuation rarely marks a clean end. The useful timeline follows access, affordability, confidence, and repeated use. Those changes can lag behind the laboratory by years or decades. The surviving exceptions are revealing. Regional adaptations mattered because grain varieties, textures, recipes, kitchen layouts, and household expectations were not identical. A product that disappears from the mainstream can remain valuable in places with different constraints. Survival is evidence that design is always conditional. Convenience for one household or business may be fragility, waste, or unnecessary complexity for another. These holdouts are not simply people trapped in the past. They can be rational users optimizing for control, durability, independence, familiarity, or low operating cost. Looking at the exceptions protects the history from becoming a simple story in which every newer product is automatically better. Finally, consider the legacy. The cooker became invisible infrastructure by turning a culturally specific skill into a dependable background process. The most durable inheritance is often not the object itself but the behavior it normalized. Later products can hide the same task behind software, sensors, or a larger network, making yesterday's visible mechanism difficult to recognize inside today's routine. To find that inheritance, follow the promise rather than the shape. Ask what uncertainty the product removed, what action it made repeatable, and what expectation it taught users to carry forward. The casing may vanish while the promise becomes an invisible standard for everything that follows. Taken together, These layers explain why the automatic rice cooker was neither a foolish dead end nor an inevitable step toward the present. It was a practical answer to one historical arrangement of labor, technology, cost, and expectation. Its rise shows what people urgently needed at that moment. Its decline shows which surrounding conditions changed. And its legacy survives wherever a newer product quietly performs the same job with fewer visible steps. That is why ordinary relics deserve more than nostalgia. They reveal the hidden systems inside everyday life.